Good morning, Dollhouse friends. I don't have a lot of time today. My oldest daughter is, who has a 2.5, well, almost 3-year-old son, and a couple of jobs, is also going to school part-time, and she's in major crunch time and exhausted and a little bit panicked. So I'm going to help out with some extra childcare today. So my little grandson, my little buddy, should be here probably in a half hour, 45 minutes, and I'm going to try to keep him out of her hair and let her use my office today to try to get some stuff done. We're going to be tag teaming because I have to run out for a couple of appointments, but she can work until I have to go. I'll come back, let her work some more, and between us, hopefully we can get her through this. She's such a hard-working girl. I am so impressed with her, and she's such a terrific mom, too. I raised a good one. I raised 3 good ones. But anyway, I had an idea for something I wanted to try to make. I wanted to try to make a vintagey looking photo album for my dollhouse, and if I can come up with something that I like well enough, I will probably list it in my Etsy shop. My Etsy shop seems to be heavy on the stuff that I get from wholesalers right now, and I really need to, I really want it to have more things that I've made in it, and I need to focus on that a little more. This part I did not do on camera, but I have printed out, and I'll just put my finger here so you can see, a whole bunch of old photographs. Some of these are photographs that my father-in-law had digital files for. They're from his family. Probably my husband's mother's family, and most of the others, most of the photos actually came from things that just images I found online. As I've said before, my dollhouse is set in the late 1920s, so I googled photos from the 1925 era and before that. So a couple of things I found out. The first camera that most people had was a Brownie, and from my research it appears that the photos that were printed from that Brownie camera were about 2¼ inches square. And I found that information in more than one source, so I thought it would be accurate, but interestingly, when I was searching for images, I did not find, I found one square image. Everything else was approximately what would equate to a 3x5 or a 4x6. Maybe the images have been adapted to our modern day, standard photo sizes. I don't know. The camera that most people used after the Brownie was called a Leica, Leica, and it seems that photo size was a 3" by 5" photo size. So that would correspond more to the sort of standard rectangle shape that I'm using here. So what I did was I used my 12th scale ruler. If you are a maker and you don't have a 12th scale ruler, get yourself a 12th scale ruler. So if you look very carefully at the divisions here, I have to keep my hand behind this so it stays in focus. There are, get the light right for you, there we go, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 divisions in this 1" segment here. Okay, so it's not in halves, quarters, eighths, and 16ths like your standard ruler. This one is in 12ths. So if you're working in the standard size dollhouse, each one of these little divisions is equal to a real life inch. This is equal to a foot. This from 7 to 8, for example, 8 to 9, each of those is 1 foot. If you're working in the Barbie scale, the fashion doll scale, then this 7 to 8 would be 6 inches, 8 to 9 would be 6 inches, and that would make each of these divisions a ½ inch. So this is really useful when I'm making small miniatures, because I will look, for example, okay, I need photos that are 3 to 5 inches. So then I can look on here and see 1, 2, 3. And then what I do, excuse me, what I do, because I find it much easier to work with millimeters when I'm working in tiny stuff, just because the divisions are nice and tidy, and trying to remember numbers like, 12/30 seconds or 19/64. It's just, it's such a mouthful. It's so cumbersome. Whereas millimeters are, they're divisible by 10. I know it's when, if you're used to the imperial system, millimeters sounds intimidating, but it's really not. So what I then do is I hold up my little millimeter ruler up to this 3-inch marking here, and that shows me that I need my images to be about 6 millimeters wide and about, if I need a 3x5, so 4, 5, about 10.5 millimeters, or I'm going to round it up to 11 millimeters. So then what I did, now I used Photoshop, but you can use whatever photo management thing you're used to. I use Photoshop Elements, actually, not the full-blown Photoshop, and I'm not going to take you through that process because I don't feel qualified to try to teach you how to do that. I'm sure there are plenty of tutorials about Photoshop and Photoshop Elements and then other photo editing things that you have. But what I basically did was I made boxes that were approximately, what did I say it was, 6 millimeters by 11 millimeters. And then I fitted my photos into those boxes. Here's the one square photo I found, so you can see this. This one doesn't cover the entire gray box. That's the only square photo I found, and oddly, it's not even one of the oldest photos. So I really don't understand why I couldn't find more square photos if that was the original size that photos were. Who knows what that was about? Maybe I just didn't spend enough time looking. Okay. The other thing is, what did I print these on? So you can just print them on standard paper, but I printed them on some very fine, I believe it's Japanese paper, and I will get my package of paper out and show you what that package looks like. And the reason is that I don't want to build up the bulk too much on these pages. So remember that, a piece of paper that seems thin to us in Dollhouse World is, more like really heavy cardstock. It's not a thin piece of paper, right? It's going to translate into something bigger. So I wanted almost a vellum weight. I don't want vellum because that's see-through, but I wanted something that was pretty fine like that. This is very fine, very smooth paper, and it's very, very thin weight. So I think that this will work to keep the photos from bulking up the pages too much. So then the other thing that I did, where are my notes here, is I poked around a little bit for some vintage photo albums that were for sale, and I looked at the size where it was available. I looked at the size of some of these albums and came out, going through all that with my 12 scale ruler and everything, decided that I want something that is about 23 millimeters by 15 millimeters. And that would come out to about a 7-inch high, 11-inch wide in real life album. All right, I have some cardstock that I'm going to deal with. So I'm going to deal with the color first. I found this I don't know how well this translates, but this is a very dark kind of spruce green color that I liked. And I'm going to first cut myself using my acrylic millimeter rulers. These were really hard to find. You can find the quilters rulers everywhere, and quilting is, always the 1/4 inch is king. But I was eventually able to find somewhere on Etsy some millimeter acrylic rulers in a few different sizes, and I snatched them up because they just work so much better for me. All right, so that's the size. That's the size of one album that I saw that I really liked online. Now I can already see a problem with that in that these photos, I'm only going to be able to get 2 photos on a page. So I'm not sure that's the size I really want to deal with. That's probably a really tiny photo album. So let me look up and see what other sizes I can find. Interesting. This one says that the photos in this book are approximately 3 by 3, but they are photos from the 1950s. 9.5 by 12.5. So if I take out my ruler here, I'm just going to call it 10 by 12. Favorite tools for cutting paper. Forgot to put you down here with me. Is a mini rotary cutter. You can see it's pretty small. People who sew use these quite often. Quilters tend to use the bigger ones. I do quilt also, and I use the bigger ones for that. But for cutting really straight lines on paper, and this will not pull at the paper the way the craft knife will. If it's not, it's, you know, if the craft knife is not absolutely sharp, it may pull at the paper. Okay. All right, so, and then I need a back piece that matches that. The one thing that does happen is that you do have this sort of like, well, that was a little bit crooked actually. I should have done it with the ruler, not just traced the other one. I'll straighten that out. You do have a little bit of overcut on the paper. Okay, so there, always close this when you put it down. Always, always, always. Respect the blades. So there I have 2 covers. Now I want to give my covers a little bit of depth, and I had some thoughts about that. One thought I had was to create sort of a frame for this. So to do that, I'm going to cut a couple of pieces that are, let's get my photos out of the way here. I'm going to cut a couple of pieces with a lot of border around them. So I have some room to play. Okay. Now, these don't have to be quite as precise around the outside. I'm not using any specific measurement here. I'm just giving myself some room to maneuver. At least that's what I'm thinking. Who knows, right? Do I have any idea what I'm doing? I do not. Okay, so I've got a little piece of, oops, I may need to change my blade in this rotary cutter. It actually doesn't seem to be cutting that well, or else I'm not putting enough pressure on there. Okay. And let's cut that in half. Okay. So what I'm thinking about doing here I'm going to trace this. This will have to be the back side When I'm doing, another thing that I like to do when I'm doing miniatures is not use regular pencils. I use a very fine, this is a .07, I think it is. This is a .5. Sometimes I use .7 mechanical pencil because that tip is always very tiny. Whereas if you're using a, regularly sharpened pencil, the tip gets, very quickly gets too dull to work in miniatures. All right, so this pencil mark is going to be hid on the back side of this. So I'm working on the back side of my paper right now. This paper is the same on both sides. So what I want to do now, so here's what I've got. Can you see the pencil line on there? I'm not sure you can. There it is. Does that show? Yeah. So I traced my album cover. So I want to do, what I'm going to try to do here is to go inside that by a couple of millimeters and create a sort of frame. So make some dots and connect them. 3 millimeters. I like to make 3 or 4 dots when I'm measuring this way, and I find that works better than just 2. If I just do 2, I can often end up off kilter, but here I will, sort of like, oh yeah, see, I'm off kilter. Already into crafting or sewing, well, crafting I'd say, I think the 2 things I never realized I would have so many of when I started to make stuff all the time was rulers and glue. Can't have enough rulers, can't have enough glue. Okay. Oh, did you see what I did? I put it down without closing it. And there's my grandson, so I gotta stop here. Things I wanted to show you before I start working on the album again. I wanted to give you sort of a demonstration of what I meant about needing to use very, very thin paper for the photos. This is these are scraps of paper that I have cut off of different things, but this is sort of a standard sheet of copy paper. It's probably 20, 22, or 24-pound paper. That's 24-pound paper is a little bit thicker. Most of the time what you're probably using in your printer just for regular everyday purposes is either a 20 or 22-pound paper. I can tell this is not 24, this is thinner. So this is a single sheet of paper. So if you printed your photos on that, what you have to remember is that everything in your dollhouse would be 12 times bigger in real life. So if I stack 12 sheets of paper together, you can see how thick that is. It's, 2 or 3 pieces of cardstock thick. So when you use a standard sheet of printer paper, you're really using something that equates to a very, very, very thick piece of paper in real life. So I mentioned that I'm using a very special paper. I did get this on Amazon. I'm not going to put a link. I'm really not fond of doing links in my videos right now because I don't have any affiliations with anything or connection. I'm not getting any monetary value for anything, and I don't know. Just maybe I'm being paranoid, but it just feels wrong to me to link something. So this is called Kokuyo. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a Japanese paper, and I did buy it on Amazon. I have it in a couple of sizes actually. It's a nice bright white paper, and it's listed as 64 GSM, which equates to about 17-pound paper in the US. And that's, you know, much, it's still going to be fairly thick, but it's much thinner than your standard sort of copy paper. I've used this in 2 different printers, my last printer, which died, and then my current printer, and I have never had any trouble, even though it's really thin, I've never had any trouble using it. So let me just count out 12 sheets here and see what that looks like. Okay, so hold that up to the camera. Get the camera to focus on that. Come on, camera. I guess it's thin enough that it doesn't really want to focus on it. It's still, I mean, 12 sheets of that is still fairly thick. Yeah, that's so funny. I absolutely cannot get the camera to focus on this paper. But it's now the equivalent of probably, and let me feel my cardstock here. It's maybe the equivalent of feels about the same as maybe 2 sheets of cardstock, which would probably be closer to the right thickness for a photograph. So that's just what I was trying to explain about the paper yesterday, and you know, just something to think about. And then of course, you know, my other thing is that I don't want to add too much bulk to the album anyway, and have the pages of the album kind of all, you know, lumpy and not lying nice and flat. So I hope that clears up what I was trying to say about the paper yesterday. Now, when I left off yesterday, I had just traced this sort of frame on a larger piece of cardstock from the piece that's going to be my cover. What I want to do with that now, remember, all of this is just an experiment. I'm inventing this as I go along. I'm just going to cut kind of an X in the middle of it with my craft knife, which will just allow me, I think, to get my scissors in there without bending the paper too much. And then I'm going to cut carefully into the corners. And right along those lines. Love these scissors, by the way. These are, I believe, Fiskars. Yeah, Fiskars makes these little, really sharp pointed scissors. They're my go-to for everything. I have, I think, 3 pairs of them in my house. Probably 4 pairs. I found one of my daughter's workspace, which I'm quite sure she stole from me. Okay. One of the things I was wondering about with this paper was whether I was going to have to color the edges if the color went all the way through the paper, and there would be white showing where I made cuts, and there's not. So this is a nice paper because it's solid color all the way through. So now I have this little rectangle cut out here. This is going to be an experiment. Well, everything with this project is an experiment. I want to try something with a ball stylus, like the kind of thing that you use. This is actually a clay making tool. I'm going to try this on a little scrap piece first. So let me just cut a little scrap piece. I want to see about kind of rounding the edges a little. I don't know if that really makes any difference or not. I think it does. I think it does make a little very subtle difference. So I'm going to take that ball stylus and I'm going to go all around my inside opening here and just try to mash down that cut edge a little bit. Alright, what kind of glue shall I use? What do you think, folks? I'm going to go with the stick glue, I believe. Now on my back side of this is where I have the pencil marks. And I'm going to try to put the glue just around the edge up to those pencil marks and not on all the way out to the edges yet. I think that's probably my best bet. I'm just going to do that over here on a scrap piece of paper so I don't get glue all over my mat. Little glue. Center my album cover in those lines. I was thinking that I wanted to try to figure out some kind of a way to texturize this surface a little bit to make it look a bit more like leather. And I don't think I'm actually going to have to do that. This cardstock kind of has a graininess to it already that I think once I coat it with something to give it a little gloss, I think it's going to be fine. Now, next thing I want to do, use my ruler to get some good clean folds right here. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this paper around the cover. So wrap it around like that. And that will just give me kind of a nice little, solid edge that doesn't look like I just cut it. I'll have to clip out my corners, obviously. So here's what I'm going to do. Just clip to my corner there. Clip to my corner there. And go around, do that all over. do the rest of those folds. Oops. Sorry, missed one. Missed one corner. There we go. Creased all around. And trim my corners a little bit. So my corner folds overlap right now. So I'm going to trim those down a little bit more so that they lie next to each other, but they don't overlap each other. Basically creating sort of a sloppy miter right here. See that? Okay, doesn't have to be special because my plan is to, you know, especially precise on the angle or anything like that because I'm actually going to cover that up. I always love it when you don't have to measure something, don't we? What is it about measuring stuff that stresses us out so much? Okay, so there I have my sloppy miter corners. Put a little glue on all of those flaps. Then I'm going to do that over here on some scrap paper. Pinch my flaps down. Kind of wish I had made this opening in the middle a little bit smaller. But that's all right. This is my first go around, and I think I might make another one of these. Maybe have one. And this could be the back cover actually, and I could make the front cover a little smaller. That's what I'll do. Okay. This glue doesn't dry very quickly. I have to hold that down for a bit. Then what I thought I would do, let's see, how big do I want this? I want about a 30 by 21.5 millimeter rectangle out of black. There you go, leave my blade open again. Do as I say, not as I do. What did I say, 30 by 21.5? And I will need 2 of those, so I might as well cut them now. I'm going to go to 60 here and cut it in half. 21.5. Closed my blade that time. Alright, try a little Aleene's this time. This isn't even Aleene's. This is Scotch. Tacky glue though. But I have Aleene's tacky glue too. They're all fine. I think they're all good. Okay. Get a little bit of this glue on the back of this black paper. Trying to get it all the way up to the edges without getting any on the front of it. Really hard when you're dealing with these teeny little pieces. So now what I'm doing is putting it on here to enclose those little flaps. And it should just barely, if I did it right, it will go just barely to the edges of this green cover. Why is that not sticking? Going to, I think it will stick. Maybe I didn't use quite enough glue. I just was really trying very hard not to get it on the outside of the paper. I didn't want anything to show. Looking for something heavy to put this under. All right, we're gonna put it under the lamp. Okay. Don't let me forget that's under there. I'll probably lose it. All right. So I like the way that came out, but I did decide that I want a smaller opening on the other side, on the front cover. I'm going to use that as my back cover. So I'm going to trace this on here. So for this opening, I think I'm going to come in about 9 millimeters. How'd that work on this side though? 9 that's too small. Let's do about 7 millimeters. I need to get one of those things where I can put the camera above my my workspace. I don't know, what's that called? I don't know what that's called, but a thing that you can hang your camera above your workspace so people can better see what you're doing, I think would be a good idea for these kind of videos. You wouldn't necessarily have to keep picking this up and holding it up in front of you. That is zoomed as far as it will go, and I can't get the camera tripod any closer. A little X in the middle of my paper. I'm not going to use the ball stylus on this one. It ended up making the paper a little bit shiny. I didn't realize that at first, but in certain lights I was catching this sort of shine to it, which I think will be alright once I cover this with, I'm probably going to use Mod Podge on it or something like that. But I think I won't try to round out the edges of this one. It's not really necessary. Alright. Glue. One of my favorite YouTubers just released her latest Patreon video. I actually watch her on Patreon, not YouTube, because there's more content on her Patreon and you get everything that she puts on YouTube, you get it much earlier. Her name is Julie Warren, and she has a channel called Little Bits and Pieces, and she lives in Oxford, England. And I'm so excited because there's a new video to watch. I started watching a little bit of it this morning, and I can't wait to watch the rest of it. She's just so much fun to follow along with. And she makes all her own stuff. Almost entirely makes her own stuff. Super talented. I said I wasn't going to use this ball stylus, but I want those edges to lie down really tight against the bottom piece of paper, so it's kind of scraping up the paper a little bit to use it. In certain lights you can see these grooves, but I don't know, maybe the album cover got dinged a little bit anyway in real life. I'm getting to the part where I'm going, okay, this is starting to look like something, and I get so excited and I start to want to rush. I can't wait to see the finished result. I'm pretty happy with how this is going so far. A lot of times when I build things, yeah, you got me on a good one here, because this is mostly going along really well. Most of the things that I try to create and build, there's a lot of, okay, that didn't work, start over. All right, let's take it down 3 steps and try something else, because that didn't work. So you got me. It's probably a false, it's a bit of a, I don't know what you call it, false advertising or something for me to be doing this one here, because I'm just looking out, it's going too well. It's just working too well. Probably run into a snag somewhere, don't worry. We'll get to the real stuff. I still have quite a ways to go to get this done, so. At least to go with the vision that I have. onto my lamp. Let's see how my first one's coming out. Okay, dried nice and flat. So here we have a back lined in black. There's the back side of this. I'm just realizing that I have to stitch these pages together, and I really did not leave myself much of a margin here, so I don't know how that's going to work. I may have to do this one over. We'll see.